All right, today we're going to be talking about the nightmare scenario on what to do if your ex has moved on to someone new. We're going to be talking about the psychology of what's going through their head and specifically the next steps on the most effective way you should handle this difficult situation. So let's talk a little bit about the grass is greener syndrome. Now, if you don't know, the grass is greener syndrome is basically this idea that when an ex breaks up with you, they think they can do better than you. Ultimately, it's a question of if they can or can't. Is the grass greener on the other side of the fence? Sometimes they'll go out and they'll find someone new and they'll be extremely happy with that new person and they won't think anything of it. Other times, most of the time, they will move on to someone new, go on the rebound, and really realize things weren't as great as I thought they were. But what is the psychology behind a man who does that? Well, from studying the latest research on avoidant attachment styles from freetoattach.com, we've learned that avoidants tend not to feel like they can miss you until they feel like you've moved on completely. Now, this can also often come after initial rebounds, when the avoidant's suppressed feelings of absent connection may finally catch up with them. They also tend to look exclusively at the future instead of focusing on the present conflicts they may be facing. So one of the things that we've learned from dealing with breakups for the past 10 years is a lot of times we find that not only are clients anxious, but their exes tend to be avoidant. Now, we're not psychologists, so we can't technically diagnose someone as having an avoidant attachment style or an anxious attachment style, but we can diagnose their tendencies. We can diagnose some of their behaviors and whether they match up or not. So we noticed that a lot of our clients who are trying to get their exes back have avoidant tendencies. And someone with avoidant tendencies tend not to look at the present scenario. In other words, they don't want to deal with their feelings right now. So they think towards the future. And the future, of course, when it comes to dating is, you guessed it, moving on. But does moving on always work out for these individuals? Well, this is a little bit up for debate. So let's say that you are in this situation. Your ex has basically put you in a nightmare scenario. They've moved on with someone else. Does that mean that new person has replaced you? Does that mean that new person is better than you? It may look like that at first, but that's the important distinction you need to make. Almost always when you move on to a new relationship, there's a sense of heightened feeling with that relationship. In other words, everything feels great. You're in this honeymoon period. A lot of times our clients are making these distinctions on, wow, this new girl or this new guy is better than me based on how their ex is feeling during the honeymoon period. They're thinking short term instead of long term. Hey there, real quick, I want to say that if you're new to this YouTube channel or you're trying to figure out what you should be doing to get your ex back and you're trying to learn if you even have a chance in your specific circumstance, probably the smartest thing for you to do is actually stop by our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, or take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz that can be found at exboyfriendrecovery.com. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, taking that free quiz is super easy to do. All you have to simply do is look in the description link below this YouTube video and click on the link you see there. It will take you directly to the quiz where you can fill it out and get an easy answer on what you should be doing going forward and overall what your chances look like in your specific situation. All right, so let's get you back to the video. So of course, the long-term view of the grass is greener syndrome or going on a rebound is what goes up must inevitably come down. That's proven to be true in almost all scenarios. So your ex's heightened feeling with their new person is eventually going to come down. And here's the beautiful part about why we find so many exes being unhappy in rebounds. We know from looking at avoidant tendencies that they typically don't begin to miss past partners or past relationships until they feel like there's no chance of that past partner coming back to them. Now, when they move on to someone else, they begin to romanticize your time. And when they begin to romanticize your time, guess what happens? They begin to compare your time to the current time that they're feeling. Now, at first, the current time they're feeling is going to look better. It's new, it's exciting, their chemical levels are way up, but once those chemical levels come down, guess what? Your level stays the same, their level comes down. And that's why we find a lot of times this grass is greener syndrome occurs. Your ex initially thinks, oh, this new person is better, until those sort of honeymoon period ends, and then they think, my ex was better. And that's why we find so many of exes are still contacting their exes and they're unhappy with their current relationships. But this doesn't really answer the question, which is, what should you do if you find yourself in this situation? So a couple of months ago, I produced a video on YouTube called the Being There Method. I actually think I produced 2 videos on the Being There Method. One that was just me sitting up for 20 minutes saying, do the Being There Method if you're in a situation where your ex has moved on, and another where I interviewed Coach Anna, and we basically picked apart the Being There Method and everything about it. If you are in a situation where your ex has moved on to someone new and you don't know what to do, the Being There Method is what you should be doing. But what is the Being There Method? Well, simply put, it's a period of time where you extend your no contact rule if your ex has moved on to someone else. Now, after that extended no contact rule is up, instead of trying to take it slow, you essentially insert yourself in the middle of the relationship with your ex and the new person to basically compete for time. And your presence of being a secure attachment style is intimidating enough for that relationship to implode. Oh, that's a lot of information. So let's break it down for you. There's a couple of things that we need to talk about with the Being There Method. Number one, it is a morally gray strategy. Some people look at this as tampering with their relationships. We prefer not to look at it that way. Instead, we don't tell you to break them up. We tell you to work on yourself, heal yourself out, grow your ex, exhibit more secure attachment style tendencies, and simply talk to your ex. That's essentially what the Being There Method is. You're not trying to break your ex up. You're just banking on the fact that when your ex does do that comparison, when they begin to romanticize the past, they have the current version of you to compare with the current version of their new girlfriend or new boyfriend. And that person can't compete with you because you're very secure with yourself. You're okay. You are understanding, hey, I got the fortitude to survive this no matter if I get them back or not. And the new person, of course, implodes because they're extremely anxious and extremely worried. And this is where the morally gray aspect of this situation comes into play. So this is where I'm kind of split. There is a morally gray aspect to the Being There Method. I will be the first person to admit that. There are parts of it that do seem like tampering with the relationship. I will be the first person to admit that. But a lot of times people ask me, what's the most effective way to handle this situation? And my answer is, this is what we've seen the most results with. This is what seems to work the best. Ultimately, the moral aspect of it is up to you. We do not condone breaking them up. We do not condone trying to get someone back if they're married or engaged. In those specific situations where your ex is married or engaged, it's better off just to leave and move on. But in a situation where your ex is continually talking to you when they're with the new person, we have found that the Being There Method can be an extremely effective approach for you to take. But let's back up for a second. Before you do anything, before you do the Being There Method or try to diagnose your ex or worry about if they've moved on, we first need to talk about if you even have a chance of getting your ex back. Now, luckily, I've put together a special quiz on my website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, that's designed to answer this exact question for you. Simply look in the description below this YouTube video, click that link you see there, and we will get you hooked up. Also, if you haven't liked, commented, or subscribed to our YouTube channel, if you could please do so, that would incredibly help us out. That would help us out incredibly. You get what I'm saying.